Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Automated Advantage. This is a casual podcast aimed at talking to business leaders about their perspectives on different topics, how they got started, advice for new business owners, whatever it is that you can get out of this. This week, we're talking to Jay Bandy, the CEO of Goliath Consulting, that help restaurants start out and get running. So hopefully, this is an enjoyable one for everybody. Hi, Jay. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you joining our podcast. If you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your business, and we'll start from there.
Absolutely. Hi, Greg. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I am the president of Goliath Consulting Group, and that's a restaurant consultancy based in Atlanta, Georgia.
And that's interesting. So when I was doing your some research on the business, I've always, like I said to you a little earlier, is excited to learn different things about different businesses. So maybe take us through your journey of how you got to where you got to, what you did before this. I saw you worked at McDonald's in the past, and you saw this hole in the market that said people need what we're doing. Maybe just a little bit about the journey.
Certainly, I've been in business 39 years now, so it has been a journey. I started off with Blimpie Subs and Salads out of New York City, and kind of traveled the country with them. Opened restaurants in 35 states. Then had a stint with Arby's and Mrs. Winters and Lee's Famous Recipe, all owned at that time by RTM. Spent 5 years with them, and then went to McDonald's. Had an opportunity to work with the leadership team in the Atlanta, what's called the Atlanta region, over about 750 restaurants. Got to do a lot of fun things with them. Kind of cut my teeth on big business. We were a $1.4 billion business unit. And with that job, I decided I'd had enough of the corporate world before I took the McDonald's job. So I did that, just a kind of finishing school for me, and then started Goliath Consulting, helping a little bit of everyone. Our clients go from the pizzeria down the street to we have a Fortune 50 company that's one of our clients as well. So we cover literally the whole gamut with that spread, right? And we do everything in the business from develop restaurants, we do branding, marketing, operational execution. We build manuals, we build operating systems, we help find sites, you name it. The only two things we don't give is tax advice and legal counsel. Everything else is free game.
I think that's a smart move. It's good to know your niche.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so that's interesting, and taking the history of the franchises that you talked about. I'm assuming you bring that to the table, and I did see as well that you've got a playbook out there. So maybe just how do you find your typical, if there is such a, it sounds like there isn't a typical customer. It's if they're in the industry, they could be a potential customer. How do you find them? What attracts you to them? Are there other people that do what you do, and how do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, there's a few things. On the marketing side, we take a non-direct approach, meaning I don't have an outside sales team. We don't go pitch operators at their restaurants or at their corporate headquarters. I've found that affiliations help. So Georgia Restaurant Association was the first organization we joined. We're also members of the National Restaurant Association here in the U.S. We attend major conferences throughout the year. We attend the National Restaurant Association show, the Restaurant Leadership Conference, the Restaurant Finance and Development Conference. And also, I was a board member for 6 years of the Georgia Restaurant Association. Currently, have an informal seat on the board still. Belong to the PAC committee for the GRA for the state of Georgia. Do some things, when I can with the NRA, and then also the local business community. So my whole thing with marketing is being in front of people that would want to hire you and have conversations which aren't sales oriented. And that's been successful for us. And obviously we're in year 16 and the listeners are going to go, well, you have to get repeat business and referrals. We get a lot of those. We have clients that have been with us for 16 years. And I say repeat because we'll work a project, it might be a couple of years, and they call us back. And then our referral network is very strong as well. So that's how we get leads in. And you're right, it is. If I go to the National Restaurant Association show, for example, a company that sells oil filtration equipment hired us to help them with marketing and branding, understanding the food service market. So we run into people like that. So it's not just restaurants we work with. We do quite a bit of business with clients in the tech and AI part of the business as well.
Okay, that's interesting because I'm interested to touch on that in a minute, but also just thinking about the the evolution of your career and things like that. I've got to believe that, like any other industry, this has changed significantly. Like what's been some of the bigger changes over maybe the last even 5, 10 years for you?
The biggest changes and a welcome change is the amount of tech companies that are now involved with the restaurant business. So we're no longer using pencil and paper, Excel spreadsheets to write schedules. We have modeling tools that are some AI driven, some are just machine learning driven. There's more automation in the back of the house. Equipment's talking to each other. For example, we recommend a combi oven that also talks to a blast freezer. So those sorts of things weren't available, 10 years ago. And so one of the things we also do is help build tech stacks for restaurant companies. And that's tech stack was not in the verbiage 10 years ago. So in addition to that, we're very adept at point of sale systems, ordering systems, et cetera, signage that talks to the POS, menu boards. I mean, I could keep going with all the tech that's come to the business. And, some of the other changes that have occurred is, over the generations, right? I'm a late baby boomer. So I've seen a few generations of staff go through the restaurants, and it's adapting to each generation and what their needs are and understanding that and applying it to HR, applying it to training, scheduling, the whole operation that involves people.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because my daughter's in the industry. She's been doing this for a while now, been bartending and serving, and I saw that the article you had about gratuities not being taxed. I know there was a very strong conversation that we had and excitement from her and things like that, which is again massive evolution. In addition to the fact that I continue to maybe be surprised. But I'm originally from South Africa, and we just did a trip to Europe in the summer where everybody there is using handhelds, and I'm still feel like fail to understand how come it's not more adapted in this country. Is there any good reason for that, or is it just there's different circumstances, different environment? I don't know.
It's interesting because, you saw that. And if you go to parts of Asia, they don't even use handhelds. They've advanced beyond handhelds. You use your phone. And so what's interesting, because I did a tech study a few years ago for a client across the world, and the United States lags a good chunk of the world in tech adoption. Part of it is credit card companies here in the US, part of it is the point of sale companies and the payment processors. And the payment processors, I've talked to, shout out to my friends out there that are holding us back, like global payment systems, because they hold such a large share of the market, they kind of control the market. So I don't know if you see that same thing in some of the other markets I studied, but we are 5 to 10 years behind in the US with the technology that's available for restaurant payment and restaurant ordering.
Which is interesting too, and just to take it to a slightly step is in South Africa, which is classified as a third world country. The things that they can do on their banking app, like pay their electricity, straight out and refill it and things like that, is very interesting to me. And I've experienced that as being a consultant, kind of coming through this dip that tends to follow, and I'm unfortunately being advantaged of it. But I think that's a good point that we do tend to lag behind with some of these things. which is so strange in the concept that we're out there leading the world, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So,
It doesn't all add up. But what's interesting is, again, what helps me sometimes is I do get perspective on a world basis, not just in the United States. And I try to pull what I can from other countries and other parts of the continent as well. But things are not consistent even in the U.S. with adoption, and obviously when you take a world perspective, much different as well.
mhm. Yeah, so talk about your just the structure of your business and the way you solve problems, because from what you've shared is you've clearly got a wide, diverse range of services that you offer. So do you act as a general contractor and bring all of these folks together and do that kind of concept, or how do you typically deliver to your clients?
It depends on the scope of the work. A lot of the work we do is problem solving. And so if someone comes to us and they're not making enough money, their sales aren't high enough, they can't figure out how to grow their business into multiple locations. A lot of that work we do internally, a lot of that work I do myself. But when we work on, for example, I was working earlier today on a restaurant development project. So there I'll bring in potentially an outside chef if needed to work on recipes. Obviously, I work with contractor and architect and all the tradespeople that go around with restaurant development, but also I might bring in a PR firm, marketing company. So that those types of projects, it's a village, but a lot of the work we do is a very small group. It's generally led by myself, or I do the bulk of the work depending on the scope of the project.
Okay, and that makes sense. And so, kind of now taking it forward to if there is such a thing, because again, you've got a diverse set of actions and activities and offerings and things like that. But what does a typical day look like for you?
Uh, a typical day kicks off generally with an internal meeting. What I mean by that, either I'm talking to my team or talking to some of the teams that kind of work for me. One of the things that happens with restaurant consulting companies, at least here in the US, is we do a variety of things which aren't direct consulting. What I mean by that is I run a restaurant group in Greenville, South Carolina. Started out as a consulting relationship, and now I oversee and have people report to me. But it's just one of the things I do. It's more of a contract gig versus just a direct consulting. So a lot of times I'm doing that kind of work in the morning, which I was today. I had a call with a team, had a call with one of my leads in one of the restaurants, then finished up on some things with that company, and then got into building a marketing plan for a client in Atlanta with one of my colleagues that works on the team. I hired a new marketing intern, um, worked on a project for another client based out of Atlanta that is in transition right now. So was sourcing all kinds of data to help them fill out forms and figure the direction to get everything buttoned up on that. And then tomorrow's going to be into operations, walking through restaurants and figuring out what's right or wrong and try to put an action plan together. And any given day has a wide variety of things I get involved with.
And that's a planned day. I'm assuming that things come get thrown at you, and you got to fit those in somewhere as well.
They do. Yeah, I spent an hour or two dealing with those kind of things, calls coming in this afternoon. And typically what I do is generally my Saturday morning or my Sunday morning are my business building hours. So those are the hours I go through and do internal marketing, look at blog posts if I'm writing them or I'm directing someone to write them up, making sure the website's updated, make sure LinkedIn's updated, you know. So I spend a couple hours every weekend just kind of going through what I call marketing activity just to make sure our brand is well represented. Also, I'm on podcast and I'm in articles weekly, monthly. So I'm out checking when things post and making sure I push that information out. So I probably spend a couple hours of the week working on the business in that respect. And then I do go to events, either in the cities, city I work in, or again, go to some of these conferences and um, just to try to stay in touch with what's going on in the market, and then just also have an opportunity to see decision makers as well.
So no, that's and so very time intensive. Very so. Have you, if you had a magic wand or whatever it is, and said, "Look, if I could just take these one, two things off my plate to make it easier," have you even considered something like that? It's like what might that be? That you talked about the marketing stuff, you talked about other stuff. It's just that the running the business type of activities that would be made easier. Did you had you not had the time, or you had more time in your day and didn't have to deal with whatever that is? Is there anything
Yeah, with
specific?
any, yes, well, yes, now that you say that. So, with running a business for 16 years, you have staff come and go. And our staff comes and goes because they find opportunities. We're sometimes a stepping stone for people to get full time work, open restaurants, you name it. So, I feel good about the ebb and flow of the business in terms of how we're staffed. And so, part of the marketing work I'm doing right now is marketing work that will get directed to my new marketing intern that started today. So I'm hoping within 30 days they'll be up to speed, and I'm actually interviewing a potential another intern that will help with my research side of the business. So we are always looking for ideas. Um, Again, a lot of the research we do on our blog post is research we do for the industry. So if I can move that to somebody that I can read executive summaries instead of doing the research, it cuts down the time I have to do that during the week. And so it is just, staying focused on the core business, which is being in front of clients.
That is absolutely strange. I Yesterday I got a warning about AWS,
Yes.
and that has never happened to me before. The good news is I can stitch these things together, and
Yeah, and it's
it's
still
so.
recording on my side. My girlfriend just texted me, and I text her back going, "Yeah, I think AWS is still acting up because I know we dealt with a
It's
lot of."
funny. I've had in the last 3 days, I've had 4 or 5 of these recordings, and yesterday it came up and said, "Hey, just beware, this may be a thing." I've none of them, and I mean mine. I don't know what it literally just went away. It was like, and I looked at my internet
So
connection, and everything's great. It's like,
yeah, I
anyway.
finished that. I saw you drop off. Didn't phase me. I just kept going. So I completely answered that question.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your professionalism. Like I said, the beauty of this thing is I can stitch it all together. So,
Yeah.
kind of picking up where you were at as far as your day to day things. Um, you talked about implementing AI for some of your customers. Have you looked at embraced? Where are you in your personal journey for leveraging AI for your particular business?
Yes, we use AI mostly for forms, for content creation, and editing. So we do run things through AI. I've got my staff is picking it up as well. We don't use it in terms of the planning process so much because our projects generally aren't quite that complex. But I know there's opportunities in terms of the planning process and Gantt charts and all that kind of stuff on the project side that we can use and will use when we have projects of that complexity. But most of our projects, we use pretty primitive project planning tools, which work great. A lot of our projects aren't that complex, but
Hmm.
it saves us a lot of time with standard operating procedure work that we do. It helps us with editing and sometimes drafting blog posts, right? Because we can get the content in and then alter it. So we probably save, if I were to guess, between 5 and 10 hours a week using AI.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's good. Good metrics as far as that's concerned, because that's what it is. And it's meant to do that. Everybody say how it's going to replace everybody's. No, it's not. It's just going to help us be more efficient. You still got to check the homework. You still have to do a lot of the input, and then monitor the output. But at the same time, like you said, if you can save you 5, 10, whatever hours a week, then all more power to us.
It is
Um,
significant.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so kind of now thinking about looking at somebody who's been doing this for a while and in business, and one of the objectives is to reach out to a broader audience and people that are maybe starting up businesses and things like that. What would your advice be to somebody starting out? And it doesn't have to be your type of business, just any business. A couple of maybe one if you follow these 2 or 3 rules. This is, don't waver from this. Any words of wisdom, any advice for somebody who's been doing this for a little while?
Absolutely. On really two fronts. So we do a lot of sit downs with potential business owners. And I'll start with the first one I do run into, just consulted with someone over the phone um, last month, and they wanted to get into the consulting business. And there's not a lot of good handbooks out there for how do you start a consulting business and how do you become successful at it, and also understanding exactly what consultants do. So I generally spend time with those folks that reach out to me talking about the ins and outs, what a day in the life of a consultant looks like, which you asked earlier, and the importance of putting a plan together and understanding marketing, understanding, what you're going to sell, what your offering is going to be, and then building structure throughout the week to get that done, to get out in front of people, to be able to start to do some work, who you reach out to, depending on what your field is that you're working in. And then how do you leverage most likely your corporate or business experience that got you to the point where you wanted to get into consulting. So that's, I get those calls probably one a month or one every other month of folks just trying to figure out what consulting's about. But when it comes to anyone starting a new business, the approach is similar, but one of the things that I think is very important is doing a lot of research on what it is that you want to do. So if it's obviously the restaurant business, I ran into a lot of people that want to get into this business. And, if they're younger, and haven't been in the business, is to actually take a part-time job somewhere as part of the process and see if this is really what you want to do, if you want to work in a restaurant, what that feels like. But if they have done that, then it's about building a business plan, not a business plan that you take to the bank. It's a business plan that talks about all the things you need to do as a business owner. Again, marketing, what your brand's going to look like, how you're going to run the business, who are the personnel that are going to run the business with you, what your real estate looks like. And a big part of it also is how much money you're going to need. And in times, maybe 20 or 30% more than what you think you need, even if you've done your research. And having enough money in the bank, because, it's been told time and time again, a lot of businesses fail just because they're undercapitalized, not because it wasn't a good idea. So it's important that folks understand the resource side. But also with the resources, you have to have a good plan that includes a pro forma, that you've mapped out what your expenses are going to be so you can see what success looks like. Financially, in the business side, hopefully you put goals in there that allow you to see what success looks like from the consumer side or whoever your end customer is, and to read the feedback that comes in and see if you're actually meeting expectations. So when it comes to restaurants, we do have a whole formula. It generally takes us a couple hours to sort out if a concept's even viable, and we'll tell a client that. And then it takes a couple weeks to sort out a business plan that fits whatever genre of the restaurant business they're going into.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that about the capital and things like that. The other thing that I particularly noticed is, and more so being an entrepreneur than it was when you were in working for somebody, is your customers' timelines are not necessarily aligned with your timeline. So, for example, I want to make my first revenue dollar by this date. That's a great objective, but doesn't necessarily mean the flow of the business is going to go like that. It's something that I've learned in the last couple of years as well.
Especially from the consulting world, because every client pays differently, and some of it's corporate institutional policies they have. So, when you work with big international firms, you can expect as a consultant to get paid 30, 60, 90 days sometimes, right? When it's a local entrepreneur you're working with, if you're smart, you take half that money up front because you want to make sure you get paid. So it can look very different, in terms of how you get paid, for example.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. It's definitely good advice, and appreciate that. So, once again, I appreciate you taking time in the afternoon. I know it's towards the end of your day, but this was enlightening. I hope that people see the value and take something out of this as far as who you are, how your business is, and some of those words of wisdom and advice that you gave out. So I really really appreciate you taking some valuable time from what I can hear. You got a very busy schedule, to just share that with everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for the opportunity. One of the things that would help the listeners is actually I put some of this into a book, and my book is Keys to Being a Successful Restaurant Leader, which when you read the book, you'll find it's not necessarily just restaurants, it's just being a business leader. So some of the things we talked about today, you'll find in that book.
That's great, and so we can make sure that we put that link out there as well, that everybody can go take a look at that. Again, Jay, I appreciate the time. I'm going to hit the stop record button, and I look forward to continued conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.